What I care about, both now and after I've gone, is that people will give filmmakers, young filmmakers, the scope to make movies without interference, without having foisted upon them premises based on algorithms or audience research or other kinds of bullshit, and we're allowed to explore and do uninterrupted, uninhibited, the way I've had the privilege and the luck to be able to do over many decades, and create original, organic, honest material of all shapes and sizes. And I'm not talking about people making the kind of films I make, but movies of all kinds.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
This is director Mike Leigh's third time on the podcast. His first two episodes are 54 and 204. This time he sat down with me a few days after his latest film, Hard Truths, premiered at the New York Film Festival. The last time you were on, we got a very good idea from you about your selection process. And because I was confused about that, or there was holes in my understanding. Because I told you that a lot of great actors came on my show, world-class actors who were not selected by you. And I was telling you how they still thought it was an incredible experience to be in an audition with, or even in a conversation with you. And so I wanted to know what your selection process was. And you were talking about how it basically is, they have to be character actors. Sometimes actors think they're character actors, but they're not. You talked about how they have to really be good, or you have to think that they're going to be good in an ensemble, because this is an ensemble process. And you talked about they have to have a good sense of humor. It was also part of it. And that made me understand a little bit more about beyond talent and everything, how they're going to work well with you in this process. But you work with a lot of people many times.
Sometimes.
Yeah. And some people, of course, you don't work with again, and there may be reasons for that. But when somebody goes away and doesn't work with you for 30 years, and then you put them back in a movie, that makes me wonder, okay, what was keeping them away from you for 30 years? And we're talking about Marianne Jean-Baptiste now. Were you always looking for something for her? Or
Well, I mean, here's the thing. There are quite a number of actors who I've worked with once. They were brilliant. And then I've never worked with them, not for any other reason other than that invariably they weren't available because they were doing something else, because that's what happens to good actors. Mm-hmm. Marianne and I have kept up a friendly relationship. It's been obvious for a while we ought to get around to it. We were going to do the Hard Truths or its clone earlier, but the pandemic put paid to that, and we finally got it together and we're doing it. The fact that it's been as long as it has, it's just one of those things, basically. Yeah. It's not there's nothing to it. What is important or maybe interesting is that, of course, during that time, we've obviously both moved on and done stuff. She has had a great career, and she's obviously now a middle-aged person, or an early middle-aged person. Because I know her very well, I know she's got a great sense of humor, and she's a great, sense of an ability to deal with all sorts of stuff, including the grotesque, And it just seemed to not only a great idea to get together again, but also to do something palpably different from what, as a young actress, she contributed to Secrets and Lies back in the mid-90s. But there's no big deal in it. I mean, we got around to it, and that's when we did it. Basically.
Yeah. Were there things that in the early stages of this film, in the early process stages, coming back with somebody that you hadn't worked with in 30 years, was there anything that you were delighted to see that was still there?
But it's obvious and it's academic. I mean, you know, we're on the same wavelength, we're on the same page, and you know, we just, it was great to be working with her again. You know, you know, she's done a lot of stuff and played a lot of characters, and is, by dint of that and by being she's got married and had grown-up kids who are very talented girls and all that, and you know, she brings to it, you know, I mean, look, you've listed what I've said previously, and nothing's changed about the basic criteria looking for an actor. But also, I mean, you know, when you've got an actor such as we're now talking about, who has got life experience, that contributes as well. You know,
I'm wondering about, and this is a question that I may be blowing too much smoke up your butt with this question, so I may not include it.
Depends how much smoke you blow. Now you've got to include it.
Many actors who've been on my show say that working with you is the greatest experience of their life, creatively. She works with you right out of college, goes away for 20 some years working with inferior directors, in inferior situations, and comes back to you. Did you have to
Nah.
Get stuff off her?
No, absolutely not. No. And you know, if she's her own woman, you know, she's her own artist. You know, she knows what she's about. I mean, she'll tell you uninhibitedly about what she thinks about some other kinds of work, and not all the work that I would have to say that it would be preposterous to say that all the directors she's worked with who weren't me were by definition inferior to me. That's bullshit, basically. She's worked with some very good directors. I mean, you know, there are directors and directors, and people do what they, you know, the fact of the matter is, I have the advantage, and therefore the privilege and the luxury, of not having to interpret scripts that other people have written. I admire the brilliant directors, of whom there are many, who have that skill. It's a skill I don't have. I mean, I have in the distant past directed stage plays written by other people, but not very much. So, I mean, as to having to sort of get rid of her bad habits or pare away whatever, it just absolutely was not an issue at all. She knows what she's about, she knows what I'm about, she knows what this sort of stuff is about. We just got on with it, really, and she was there, fresh as a daisy, able to do it, you know. I mean, there's absolutely no issue with that at all.
Last time you were on, and subsequently in interviews that you've done, you talked about how it was a little bit of a struggle to find money for this film, the money you need. And I was just wondering, when you do settle on a budget that is not exactly what you would have liked it to have been, how much is that playing into your mind dramatically as you're constructing this in your process?
Look, you cut your cloth according to its length. It doesn't, if I understand the subtext of your question, was it in any way inhibiting or no? I mean, I don't cast, we don't make decisions about casting or anything until we know exactly what the budget is, and I've sat down with my producer and my casting director and just talked in theory about what we could afford, how many people, for how long, etc. Of course, including the other things that go into a film. And of course, factored into budgeting one of my films is rehearsal time, although that's relatively cheap compared with the actual cost of shooting, of course. Once having made those decisions, once having clarified that, then the job is to embrace it and, you know, not make the obvious mistake of hiring too many people who we can't afford or blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's just a question of, as I say, cutting your cloth according to, you've got a wall and you want a mural on that wall. and you hire an artist and you say, that's the wall. You can do whatever you like, but this is the budget. It's got to be finished by a certain time. The light falls from over there. People will view it from over here. But apart from that, you do whatever you like. You're free to create whatever you like. But the wall won't get any bigger or smaller. The wall is the wall. And that's the bottom line. So, of course, yes, I would love to make or to have made a film on the scale of, say, Peterloo, or indeed Topsy Turvy, where I do what I normally do, and that's to say, not to tell anything to the backers at all, but just to say, give us the money, and I can't tell you about casting, can't tell you about content, and we'll leave us alone and we'll make a film. I would love to do a bigger scale, contemporary film with multiple characters. And even the likes of Secrets and Lies is just in terms of the internal dynamics, way more complex than the structural content of Hard Truths. But in the end, it's about making it work and embracing it and enjoying it and, getting everything out of it. So, the fact of the matter is that, yes, Hard Truths is only 97 minutes. Yes, there are not a huge number of scenes, and the action deals in linear terms with a fairly limited sequence of events. But that's talking about it laterally. But if you dig down vertically from the surface, hopefully it's quite multi-layered and complex. And that's really what it's all about, basically. So, it's about, as I say, cutting your cloth according to its length. Yeah. So it's not really an issue once you get down to it.
When you were on last, you talked about how there was, in the case of, for instance, Vera Drake, and in the case of Secrets and Lies, you had a theme you started with: abortion, adoption. Yeah. But that was it. And then you proceeded with your process. Yeah, was there anything for this that you started with?
No, other than the fact, no, there wasn't. I mean, the real bottom line is no. Of course, it's fairly obvious what I have consciously done, which is to say, okay, let's make a film about black people, black community, black family. But in doing that, I'm actually only doing something that I've done in all kinds of ways over a lot of my. I've done a play in Australia about Greek Australians. I did a play in London about Jews. I did a film in Northern Ireland about the Catholics and Protestants on both sides of the political divide. I've made films about upper class people. I've made lots of films in different perspectives about working class folk. I did a play, Goose Pimples, which is about a Saudi finding himself adrift in London, etc. And I've had black characters in my films a lot. Here, I've said, okay, let's get, starting with the premise that Marianne's going to do it, let's actually do that. Let's look at that. I mean, it's not, for me personally, on a personal level, it's way less of a journey into unknown territory than, say, going to Australia and doing a play about Greek Australians, because I lived in North London for 30 years. My boys grew up and went to school with black kids who were in and out of our house. No big deal, basically, But having decided to do that, which I felt was a good idea, and I think on the whole it's worked out okay. Having decided that the one thing I absolutely, obviously knew that I wouldn't do, though I don't think I would naturally do it anyway, which is to deal in tropes and stereotypes of what mostly movies about black folk do, because it's actually about people. And, people have responded to Hard Truth and said, I know Pansy, that's my mother, that's my grandma, that's a neighbour, or a guy I know, whatever. And that's not black folk saying that, that's people saying that. It's a film about people.
I found it fascinating that Twain Barrett said in the Q&A the other night that when he was in your process, as all actors have to do, they brought different people in.
People they know.
and everybody he brought in, when I say brought in, I mean talked to you about them. Everybody he was talking about was what you would call a go-getter or or in your words, not a loser.
Well, showbiz types and
showbiz types.
Successful people and all that.
Yeah. So my question is trying to figure out your process at this moment. Why did you need a loser type for Pansy's son? Why wouldn't it be just as interesting, dramatically, to actually have someone as her son who is on the outside a showbiz type, but who is kind of still vulnerable in the way that Moses is?
Well, with all due respect, I mean that is a very elliptical and, if I may say so, irrelevant kind of question. I mean, the fact of the matter is that I, as a dramatist, as the screenwriter, if you want to use those language, it's my job and prerogative to have conception about the kind of character I want to have. Thus, I had a notion of the kind of character I wanted to investigate. Simple as that. That's a choice, an artistic choice. I mean, you could ask the same question about Hamlet. I mean, just think if Hamlet had been a different kind of...
Yes.
If Hamlet had been a second-hand car salesman type of person,
yes,
would the play have hung together? I mean, it's with respect, I think it's a red herring bullshit question.
Wait, can I push back 1 second? Your process is basically taking what people are bringing you.
Yeah.
You don't invent people out of whole cloth. Out of whole cloth, as the saying goes, right? You don't invent people.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah, out of nowhere. You don't invent people out of nowhere.
The point is
that you breathe, and he was bringing you. The universe was bringing you people through him.
But all artists, in every meaning, whether they write novels or paint pictures or make sculpture or create music or write poetry or whatever, you make choices. You draw, as an artist, there's no two ways about it. My job is to look at the real world, to draw from the real world, but to make choices about, what it is I want to explore and thus how to explore it, etc., etc. For me, the job of making a film, or indeed a play, is the job of collaborating with a gang of people to go on a journey of discovery and discover what the piece is in the journey of making it. But that isn't, I mean, to be honest, the underlying premise of your question, of what you're talking about, would suggest that anything goes. That anything is a source material. Well, it's not. I mean, you could. I mean, I learned at art school, you walk around with a sketchbook, you sketch all kinds of things, but certain things are what you want to develop and certain things you don't.
Yeah, good point.
When I'm starting even at the most early and putative stage, working with the actors, I've got notions about the dynamics of it. It will change, it will grow. And what's important about what we're talking about now is not, shouldn't I have accepted a kind of gone into a kind of area I didn't really want to and then see what will happen. The fact is, the matter is, I did make some kind of choice and pointed in a direction so that we could start with the kind of things that I instinctively felt I wanted to explore. But then the job remains to see how that grows and to go with that. But make no mistake about it, my job is to take from the material and add to the material and influence the material and mold it and shape it. I mean, how many novelists have you read saying, I didn't know where it was going to go? I suddenly realized that the character was telling me this should happen. But that doesn't mean that the character took over and wrote the book. Right. That just means that was part of the creative inspiration. And, painting, which is always a very good analogy, painting is involved with that. You take from what you see and the paint itself may dictate that you take a different, go in a direction. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
Permit me to ask the most in-joke question for Mike Leigh fans. What would you do if Duane Barrett becomes the next late night show host on American television?
What would I do? I'd laugh. I'd say, great, well done.
Okay, you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm referring to.
James Corden.
Yes. And there are connections between these two films in a way, aren't there? And between these two characters.
Yeah. So what?
I mean, were you consciously kind of going back and kind of mining this out again because you haven't finished?
No, not at all. No, actually, there are a number of characters in my films who relate to Moses and indeed Corden's character in All or Nothing. But I don't do it consciously. I never think, this is like that. I don't think about that at all. I don't. Then afterwards, people say, actually, that's like, and I think, oh yeah, well, there you go. But this is a different investigation. I'm not in the business of referencing my own work.
And you don't even think if you do think back on it, aren't you curious that you're going back again to a certain thing?
No, because in the end, each film is its own thing and it's its own investigation. And I mean, notwithstanding what we're now saying, actually, I would submit that of all my 28 films, whatever it is, that no two of them are actually clones of each other.
Yeah, that's true.
Actually.
Very true. I hope you'll take this as an enormous compliment that it is, and not
I'm
be annoyed.
already insulted.
And not be annoyed by this.
Okay.
But whether you like it or not, I'm influenced by you, and I want to use a version of the way you work with actors to make films.
Okay.
And I'm going to do that.
Okay. I look forward to it.
So these next questions are I'm trying to go a little deeper, and some of this is going to be a little philosophical. So I want you to take it in that vein. Okay.
Sure.
I relate to Pansy's character more than I'm even willing to say to you right now. Okay?
You mean you personally relate to it?
Personally.
You are Pansy.
I'm basically Pansy.
Cool.
I mean, and I hope people don't think that this is an exaggeration the way this person is, because I could bring you people that I have yelled at within the last month.
Okay. I'd rather you didn't bring them.
I also have the same kind of jumping up situation, but everyone annoys me in life. My family annoys me. Everyone annoys me. Everybody's doing something wrong that I need to point out. Like this exists. But the fascinating thing is that Marianne at the Q&A said, when someone said, we don't really know where her pain comes from. And she says, well, I know where it comes from. I know exactly where it comes from. Well, Mike, I don't know where mine comes from, though. Like, I don't know. I can tell.
You're not the actor playing you.
But this is what I want to talk about. Do you think maybe it's not exactly ideal that actors are writers in your process? Because what I'm saying is, and I'm just talking about ideal, could there be some way where, let's just say you had all the money and all the time in the world, would you have an actor kind of live out all of the things as the character for years?
No.
And then without writings, because once you start, let me just finish this. Once you start examining, like I'm saying, like if I really found out what was causing my issues that I say I relate to in this film, I'm not sure that I would be a slave to them anymore. Do you know what I mean? And it would be hard.
But we're two quite separate things are crossing wires here. What you're talking about, if I understand what you're sharing, is to do with your permanent running condition. What we're talking about in the context of what I do is to create a piece of art, to create an artifact, a movie. If I understand your notion accurately, you are saying, what you're asking, how would it be if the actor lived the character for a great length of time? What difference would that make? Well, it would be a waste of time, a waste of energy. Ultimately, I won't even say counterproductive, it would be non-productive. Because what we're in the business of doing is creating a work of fiction, to creating a piece of art, to creating a movie. Apart from anything else, and this has been talked about quite extensively, including no doubt previously to you on your podcasts, that I'm very strict that an actor is able to go into character completely and be the character when in character, but to come out of character when not in character, partly so that we can then objectively discuss what motivated the character when the improvisation or whatever was happening, and we can then deal with it and distill it, make choices and dramatize it, and partly because it's not healthy for the actor. So the notion, if I understand you correctly, that you're talking about an actor becoming the character for a very long stretch of time is anathema and irrelevant. It has absolutely nothing to do with what it's all about. We are talking about a group of people working together for a fixed, finite length of time, which has deadlines and the need for an end product to be finished. And that's what it's all about. So the kind of psychodrama, psychotherapeutic, whatever it is that you're talking about, it's got absolutely nothing to do with the case and is totally irrelevant.
I'm glad you said that, because one can link the psychodrama I'm talking about with people who use real people in films.
What do you mean, use real people?
Well, meaning they don't cast actors. They find the person.
Oh, I see, yeah.
So that's what separates you. And I think people who don't understand your work think, oh, he just finds, I don't know, or it's similar to what somebody like Ken Loach does, right? Finds a non-actor. And the connection between the two is not a good one, between you two, I think, and because of what you just said.
Yeah, it's quite straightforward. I mean, first of all, what I do is realism, not naturalism.
Yes.
Which is to say heightened and about distilling the essence of things. It's about highly, and ultimately, and this is very important for everyone to remember, that, one of the greatest myths about my films is that what you're looking at is improvised on camera. Nothing is improvised on camera. It is very, very tightly scripted and rehearsed, but scripted through rehearsal. I never go away and write, come back and give it out to the actors. We discover it by rehearsing, starting with improvisation to breaking it down and building it up, and me putting things in and taking things out and swapping things around and so on and so forth until you get to something that's very, very precise. Now that is rather something which is realism but not naturalism, not surface naturalism. And that is something that is, and in terms of the whole film, is consciously and carefully constructed by me, structured by me. I make decisions of a dramatic nature and all of that. So it's not ad hoc, and it certainly isn't in any shape or form any kind of therapy for anybody, except for me.
I couldn't even dream of being in a Mike Leigh film because I'm American. You've never put an American until this film into one of your films, isn't that correct?
Who's the American in this film?
Annie Nelson.
Okay. Sure.
The beautiful moment at the end with Moses, the beautiful silent performance that she gives at the end.
Which bit are you talking about?
In the fountain, near the fountain.
That's not Annie Nelson.
Damn it.
Annie Nelson plays the daughter who works for the cosmetic company.
Oh God, imagine if this was live.
Well,
going into the world.
That's your problem.
So embarrassing.
Anyway, who said she was an American?
Tulane.
The character was American.
Fuck. Are you kidding me?
Well, we decided that the character was American. And then...
I thought he said she's from New York.
No, I said she's American, meaning the character is American. And he said, yeah, she's from New York, meaning the character is from New York.
Unbelievable.
So she's not an English actress.
Okay, so we're back to you never having an American in your film. In your films.
And...
Well, I take great offense to this, but basically what I want to know is, and you're sitting across the table from somebody, right, who would devote their entire life to the role. What do I have to do right now to show you that I could be the first American?
Well, let's just deal with the general question. Let's miss out your own aspirations and merely deal with the question. Look, there is Hollywood and American independent cinema, and there is world cinema. World cinema, all around the world, people are making indigenous films that come out of their own country, their own culture, etc. One of the countries where that happens is the United Kingdom. And I make films in the United Kingdom. And the natural thing I do is work with British actors. I don't work with Singaporean actors or Chinese actors or actors from the African subcontinent, or you name it. Oh, and incidentally, I also don't work with American actors as such. I mean, of course, it's been suggested over the years, well, why don't you do a film in the States? And, well, yeah, but actually, you know what? I mean, I am, apart from anything else, I'm committed to making films in the UK because I believe very strongly in the UK film industry. And in making indigenous films that come out of our culture.
Yeah.
That's the answer to that.
But can an American character be...
Yeah, of course.
And be played by an American?
Yes, of course, if I chose to do that. But, you know, I mean, yeah, I could do all of that. And there are American actors who I know and who are quite well known, and very well known, some of them, who, you know, would quite like to do it. But, you know, it's a possibility always in theory, but in practice, it's about, you know, apart from anything else. I mean, look, here's a film, Hard Truths. There's a whole bunch of actors in it. There are the actors who play the core characters, and then there's all these other actors, including the actress who you've mixed up with one of the other ones, who come and do supporting roles. For me, it's important that I've served those actors, got them involved, however briefly. There are a lot of actors in the UK, too many. Mm-hmm. So with respect, from your point of view, this is a very important issue. From my point of view, it's not an important issue at all.
For somebody like that who plays such a pivotal role, I think, in an ending, especially to another character, another of the main characters, do you put her through the same process as everybody else? Very briefly.
No, I mean, of course not. Not in depth and detail.
Yeah.
No, we talked a bit and very, very briefly.
Interesting.
But all the actors that do those supporting roles have done a very brief version of the thing, mostly on the same day as the stuff was shot. Yeah, but that's, you know, that's part of the art and craft and skill of the thing.
I saw you in the audience on Saturday night. You were sitting in the audience.
Yeah.
And I was hoping that you had to leave to go backstage to do the Q&A before it was over, but I was hoping that you had heard the roar of the applause at the end.
I did, yeah.
I mean, I've rarely been in a screening where as soon as the credit comes up, it's not just one person or a bunch of people and then everyone's like, I guess we should clap. It was an entire roar of applause at the same time. And I felt very happy for you to hear that. And then you come out and it's a standing ovation. I'm saying all this as a prelude to, I must tell you that I was actually scared when Hard Truths didn't play at Cannes, didn't play at Venice, didn't play in Telluride. And I started to think, oh my God, this is scary. What's going on here? And that of course...
Well, we finished the film over a year ago. And we spent the first half of this year sitting around wondering, why is Cannes doing it now? Maybe it'll go to Venice, probably it will, but it hasn't. And gradually starting to think, as you did, well, maybe we've made a shit film. Though we didn't particularly think we'd made a shit film. Then we went to Toronto, and it had much the kind of response that it had in the Alice Tully Hall that you're referring to the other day. And then we went to San Sebastian, where it played to a Spanish audience, and it had the same response again, and that's with Spanish and Basque subtitles, 2 lots of subtitles. And then it happened again in New York. So we now know that, on the whole, it's likely that we haven't made a shit film. Maybe. It was great. It was wonderful.
What do you account for the lack of connection with the greater movie-going community that
what connect? No.
That these
you mean why did Cannes and Venice turn it down?
Yeah.
Well, that's to do with them, isn't it? That's to do with. I mean, they plainly want glitz and glamour movies, and whatever else you can say about Hard Truth, it's not glitz and glamour, basically. So I mean, of course, for me, there's a certain irony in it. I mean, I have won the Palme d'Or for one film and the Golden Lion at Venice for another, et cetera, and some other awards at both of those festivals. I've been to Telluride quite a number of times, and it's always a very pleasant experience and very positive. But you know what? The question, I don't have an answer to your question because it's about them. You can ask them, but I don't know. I mean, it's not. It ceases to be an issue.
Do you have any care about what happens to this art form after you're gone?
This art form?
Yeah, cinema.
Of course, I do. After I've gone?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's for great art. I mean, if you're asking me whether I care what will happen in 20,000 years' time, that's a whole different thing. But if you mean as we progress through the 21st century, there are young movie makers of all kinds coming along all the time. And I care that they will be able to make movies. What I care about, both now and after I've gone, is that that people will give filmmakers, young filmmakers, the scope to make movies without interference, without having foisted upon them premises based on algorithms or audience research or other kinds of bullshit, and we're allowed to explore and do uninterrupted, uninhibited, the way I've had the privilege and the luck to be able to do over many decades, and create original, organic, honest material of all shapes and sizes. And I'm not talking about people making the kind of films I make, but movies of all kinds. And the nature of what a movie is changing and will change. And that's great, So yeah, sure I care, of course. My son, Leigh, is a filmmaker. His movie, Sweet Sue, which hasn't had a US release, is great. It's a lovely film. I'd love, maybe both my grandsons, who are respectively 7 and 6 months old, will be filmmakers. Certainly the 7-year-old shows can draw beautifully and all the rest of it. So we're therefore talking about possibly creative activity, maybe movies and maybe not, right at the end of this century, I don't know. And I care, basically.
Knowing that you care, isn't it important, because someone like me is saying to you, and many people feel the same way, that you've made some of our best movies and you've gotten the best out of actors. So and you care about the future of movies. So don't you think it's important to literally pass down the way you do them to somebody? Basically, I'm asking you, can I come and be your apprentice?
No. No way.
Okay, but can someone come and be your apprentice?
No.
Tell me why, Mike.
I mean, there are people who have worked with me as assistant directors and things who have, gone off, and it's helped them to develop their own ideas and things. I teach a lot. I teach in various different places. Actors, film students, and theatre directors. I am committed to that. But I don't have somebody who is there in order to conduct an apprenticeship in order to do it. That seems to me a red herring and a nuisance around the set. And everybody who's there learns by being there, basically. So let's just make it clear. If you show up, the door will be slammed in your face.
It was clear before,
Okay.
But thank you for that. 81 is not old at all anymore. We have examples of filmmakers. I worked closely with a filmmaker who died at 93. He was making films right up until he died. Of course, Oliveira was 140 years old making films. So, Mike, I just want to know if there's something percolating right now, the next one.
Yes.
Can you say anything?
Absolutely not.
Mike Leigh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.